You might think identity theft is all anonymous hackers and data breaches. What if I told you the real threat could be sitting across from you at the dinner table? Hi, I'm Tom Christiano of Blankingship and Christiano, and with me is Hugo Blankingship, my law partner. We're going to be discussing the effects of identity theft and specifically family members that steal your identity. The FBI has called identity theft one of the fastest growing crimes in America, and to be sure, it's on all of our minds. Hugo, do data breaches lead to a lot of identity theft, or is that a common misconception?
That really is a common misconception. We've seen a lot of data breaches, like Equifax, for example. They were breached, in Target and other big retailers. But when those happen, we don't see an influx of a lot of new identity theft cases. Believe it or not, most of the cases that we're seeing involve family members, whether it's a parent or a child or a sibling or maybe even a former spouse. Unfortunately, it's the people that you know who have access to your information that are using it to create identity theft.
If you think about it, it makes sense. Who knows your date of birth, your address, your social security number, has access to your tax records? It's going to be a loved one or a family member. These people can have problems of their own in lives. And unfortunately, we've had some clients where we've had family members that have had substance abuse issues or other issues in which their intentions might have been fine, but they stole somebody's identity anyway. It's a double problem for a family identity theft because you have the problem of inaccurate credit report, as well as the problem of a loved one that you don't want to send to jail or file a police report on. Hugo, under the Fair Credit Reporting Act for identity theft, do individuals have to file police reports?
No, they absolutely do not. The Fair Credit Reporting Act allows you to reinvestigate or dispute identity theft without filing a police report. But the credit reporting agencies want to force you into doing that, and particularly if it's a family member. They want to force you into turning somebody in and going through that so you won't actually do it. They don't want to process identity theft, and they don't want to take it off. So they're going to make it as difficult as possible for you. But you don't have to file a police report in order to get it off your credit report.
And why do you think they want you to file a police report?
They have set up a system that allows their processors to simply look for identity theft, affidavits, or police reports. That's all they're looking for. They're not going to go through your documents and your dispute letters and your information and all your explanations as to what the problem is. They are only trained to look for a police report. And if they don't find that police report, then they're just going to send it off to the furnisher, who might be a debt collector or somebody like Verizon or a bank or lender, and leave it up to them. But they're not going to fix it that way.
Well, as you mentioned, the good news is you don't have to file a police report on your family member and send them to jail to correct your credit report. The Fair Credit Reporting Act has other mechanisms in place to help you have the deletion of inaccurate identity theft related accounts. Another form of identity theft report you could do is called an FTC affidavit. Now, the Federal Trade Commission establishes protocols for identity theft, and they have resources on their website. And one of the resources is the FTC Identity Theft Affidavit. You can fill that information out, and you don't have a perpetrator of the crime. You can simply fill out the form, print it off, and send it with a dispute letter to a credit reporting agency, which also should help you invoke your rights to have inaccurate identity theft-related information from your credit report. Hugo, have you seen any consumers have success with FTC affidavits, or what do you think is the chances of success with dispute?
Our experience is that the credit reporting agencies aren't taking these things off. And the furnishers, the data furnishers that are reporting it to the credit reporting agencies, they're not doing a reinvestigation either. They're sending these things out to India, Costa Rica, and Chile. They're sending it out to third-party companies that they don't even manage or supervise. And we understand that they're paying right around 12 cents per dispute. That's right, 12 cents per dispute. I don't know about you, but I don't think you're going to get much of an investigation for 12 cents. I don't care where you send it. So, no, I don't think it's coming off, Tom.
No, and the real sad part is under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the Consumer Reporting Agency has a duty to conduct a reasonable reinvestigation and not a 12 cents investigation that you mentioned, Hugo. So once a consumer is a victim of identity theft and they send a dispute letter in with FTC affidavit or a police report, if you did file one against a non-family member, the Consumer Reporting Agency has a duty to conduct an investigation, review all the contents of the letter, including a description of how the identity theft was done in the supporting documentation. But they simply aren't going to do that for 12 cents. They're going to attach it to what's called an automated consumer dispute verification form. and send it along its way to the very company that's already reporting the identity theft related account. Hugo, do you think that's going to result in getting that account removed from your credit report?
No, and they don't want it to result in that. The thing is that they outsource it to these companies in India and Costa Rica, and they don't trust them, right? They don't trust them to take it off. So they're not going to take it off, and it's not going to happen. Even if you send a police report, we've seen multiple times when clients have sent in police reports and they tell them that the police report's no good. It's not going to be sufficient. They have all these restrictions. So not only do they tell you that you have to file a police report when you don't, even if you do send it in, they probably aren't going to take it off.
That's a good point, Hugo. So there's very technical requirements under the statute of what constitutes a valid identity theft report. And the Fair Credit Reporting Act lawyer knows these technical requirements and can look at your credit report dispute letter to make sure it has all the items that is necessary. One of the items that I think is important is a police report that identifies the correct account that has the identity theft related information. What other items are in a police report that will be good and accepted by the CRA?
Well, you don't have to identify who did it. And a lot of times you don't know, or maybe you just suspect, right? You think it might be your son or your daughter that did it, but you don't have to identify who did it. But you do need to identify approximately when it happened, and that you should be able to figure out from your credit report. And you also need to identify the exact accounts that you're disputing. That's probably the biggest thing. But, also it'll indicate the name of the officer and the name of the police department where you filed it.
It's a good point, Hugo. And they're not training their processors to really consider the holistic credit file in an identity theft scenario. What they're going to do is just simply attach this form to the ACDB and send it along the way to the furnisher. They're not going to investigate whether or not the address was the identity thief's address or there was a misspelling of the name that the identity theft used. There are clues to identity theft that credit reporting agencies and banks that report that information can see if they conduct a proper reinvestigation. For example, many times there's a variance in the spelling of a name or a similar address that's different. All the thief has to do is get enough information to get approved for credit. And when you have online lenders and people that are trying to make loans with as little information as possible and as fast as possible, the thieves know how to game the system and get credit reported in your name that will then be hard for you to remove. Do you have any examples of cases like that, Hugo, that you remember?
Yeah, we've we've had a lot of them. It seems like identity theft is probably the predominant sort of case that we represent consumers on. But we've had sons that have stolen their father's information. We've had parents that done it to children. One of the clients that we had, her mother stole her identity while she was in college and used it to open up student loans. She didn't use the money to pay her daughter's student loans. She used it for herself. Now, she claimed that she was going to pay it back, and she did make a couple of payments, but she didn't and went into default, and it killed her daughter's credit. Well, as you might imagine, her daughter was really upset. You remember how that worked out?
Yeah, no, it worked out pretty well. So even though the thief had sent a confession letter to the person who gave out the student loan, they didn't care, and they left it on her credit report anyway. And again, it was a young consumer who was trying to start off in life, and they have a trash credit report for a defaulted student loan that they didn't even get the benefit of the loan from. So the good news was we were able to help them through the dispute process, help them through litigation against the wrongful entities. And ultimately, I think the mother got to the daughter's wedding after our representation was over.
There was a reconciliation, but I'll give the mother a lot of credit for that one because she actually did fill out a lengthy form and she sent it in to the student lender. And she said, look, I did this, take it off of my daughter's credit report. I mean, she was doing the best she could to try to get it corrected, but it doesn't matter. And that's the thing. Unless you get a lawyer, you're not going to get it off your credit report. They're just not going to take it off.
And if you think about it, Hugo, if they're not going to take identity theft related accounts off a credit report when we know the perpetrator and they've confessed, then how is the typical consumer going to get a random identity theft account off of their credit report? As I mentioned, you see these online lenders and the goal is speed of lending and electronic transactions. They want a frictionless process. And part of the weaknesses of a frictionless process to make a loan is you have less information to prove that the person actually did open the account and it wasn't stolen identity. We've seen this in other cases where we've had members of the military. They're out and defending our country and someone's opening credit accounts in their name and they're online lenders and it's almost like a ghost got a loan in your name and you can't get it off your credit report. Hugo, you remember that particular case?
Yeah, that was a particularly difficult problem. The guy was in Afghanistan at the time, and he found out that somebody had bought a car in his name, and he was so distracted that they had to fly him back and end his deployment. Ultimately, we were able to get that problem solved as well. In fact, we've gotten them all solved. So if you come to us or you come to a experienced credit reporting lawyer, it may take a little while, but they're going to get it fixed and you're going to get your good credit back.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that you should contact an experienced credit report lawyer because unfortunately, the sad part is many people give up and many consumers, they don't know the process. They feel like it's easier to just pay the identity theft related loan and get it off their credit and move on with their life. But the problem with that is you can never prove your innocence at that point. And that's right. I said prove your innocence because that's what the credit reporting agencies really require in identity theft scenarios. They set up the system where the consumer has to prove that they didn't open the loan when the law and the statute requires the opposite, that the consumer reporting agency should verify that the loan was actually opened by the consumer. Do you have an opinion on that topic, Hugo?
Yeah, I mean, they know what the law is, right? The credit reporting agencies, they know what the law is and they know what the law requires, but they don't follow it and they don't train their people to follow it. They think everybody's lying, or at least they claim that. And so they're not going to take it off unless somehow you can prove beyond some reasonable doubt that you're the victim of identity theft. But guess what? You're not going to be able to prove it. And that's why you're going to need a lawyer. But what's the good thing about hiring a lawyer? What most clients who are concerned about the cost, what about that?
Well, thankfully, under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, one of the authorized recoveries is for attorney's fees. Now, attorney's fees can be very substantial in a credit reporting case. They can be as high as hundreds of thousands of dollars. But under the FCRA statutory provisions, attorney fees can be covered and as a result of a successful litigation. So the consumer has the ability to know and the reassurance to know that their legal fees are going to be covered and they'll be entitled to recover any potential damages. And potential damages can include actual damages of increased costs of credit, statutory damages, and punitive damages.
The damages can be really high and the legal fees can be just as high as well. And that's the reason a lot of these cases will settle early before the consumer has to do a whole lot of work in the case. I mean, the lawyer is going to have to get it filed and go after the credit reporting agencies or whoever's reporting it. But the legal fees can tend to be higher than the actual damages in the case. And that's what gets these cases to settle and settle sooner rather than later. And that's a good thing for the consumer.
Well, the credit reporting agency is counting on wearing people out, in my opinion. There's a process involved in the dispute process, and then there's a process involved in the litigation process. And that's where an experienced lawyer can help you navigate and be reassured that you're going to get a resolution that gets your credit report fixed and you're compensated for your damages, all the while not paying for legal fees, which is a very important part of the process. The stress and damages related to identity theft, and particularly in a family identity theft scenario that we've discussed, you have families that are just split in two, and we can solve the credit report problem, get the inaccurate information off your credit report, and get a recovery and not have you, the consumer, have to pay attorney's fees. It's a very fulfilling case when we get to the end like that. And it's important for people to know that they have hope and that they don't have to go it alone and that they shouldn't give up. Right, Hugo?
Yeah, and the real rewarding part for us is if the ultimate happy ending is that the family is reconciled together. And that can happen. And it does happen in most of these cases because ultimately, whoever it was that stole your credit, they do feel badly about it. They do feel like they've hurt you and they do want to make amends. And if ultimately we get the credit cleaned up, we get you compensated for all that they put you through, then it makes it a little bit easier to reconcile with that family member that's done this to you.
I agree. And the other important part is, as in any identity theft case, punitive damages are an element of recovery. Under the FCRA, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, punitive damages can come into play in identity theft scenarios if the consumer reporting agency ignores the information that's provided as part of the dispute, if it ignores that FTC affidavit, if it ignores the police report if it's provided, if it ignores discrepancies in addresses where the thief was delivered packages or established the bank account. So punitive damages definitely are important part of the statutory framework for recovery, right, Hugo?
Yeah, and these companies, they're making billions of dollars. That's right, billions of dollars in profits every year on you, the consumer. Why? Because it's their job to maintain this information and to maintain procedures to ensure maximum possible accuracy. Not just that it's sort of accurate, but maximum possible accuracy. But they don't want to do it. They want to outsource it and spend as little as possible and not clean up your credit and leave you with the problems. That's why you got to get a lawyer.
It is why you have to get a lawyer. If you think about the incentives of the system, the bank is never incentivized to take it off your credit file because they've already lost the money because the thief has the benefit of the money. If they can leave it on your credit report and then get you to pay the money that the thief stole, then they get their money back and you're the one who bears the loss of the identity theft. And it's not how the statute is set up at all. Why should you pay for an identity thief to have a vacation? It doesn't make any sense. The whole point of the process is to get a dispute in, to provide identity theft related information and have information deleted from your report. Hugo, how long do you think it takes for identity theft to get removed from your credit report?
Well, it does take a little while because first you have to dispute it with the credit reporting agency. So you got to send the letter in, you got to wait for them to process it and send it back. And when they don't take it off, which they're not going to do, then you got to send another letter in. And if they don't take it off, maybe you're going to send a third letter in. And then after all of that process goes through, then you can get around to filing a lawsuit against them. But the good news is that shortly after we file a lawsuit against one of these credit reporting agencies, it starts to come off. And if we sue the furnisher first, it will definitely come off. They know what they did. They know that they opened an account without a driver's license or information. Maybe they opened it online. They know that they didn't do a proper investigation. They just kept verifying it because it's cheaper. But ultimately, when they get caught, they're going to pay the price.
Yeah, I personally think how long it takes depends on how inefficient the process the consumer reporting agency does. Their process is set up for speed and not for accuracy. And sadly, that's not what the Credit Reporting Act is about. It's supposed to be set up for accuracy. So if you send 4 or 5 letters, it's going to take longer than if they fix it in 1 letter, obviously, but it's not designed to be fixed quickly. It's designed for the quickness of getting the total dispute resolved and not in solving your particular problem. That's why I think it's hard to tell how long it's going to take. And really the benefit of having a Fair Credit Reporting Act lawyer is that we can guide you through the process and make sure it takes as little time as possible.
Well, we definitely can speed up the process and we can help you draft your dispute letters and we can help you get the process going. But one of the other things that we do provide for our clients is a bit of assurance that it ultimately is going to be okay. You know what you're going through and it's a nightmare and you just hope it's going to end. But if you actually hire a lawyer, you won't be as frustrated and you will be able to finally get it fixed. And that's the really good news about the process.
Right. Thankfully, at the end of the day, we're helping people reclaim their name, and your name has been soiled by an identity thief, and you need to get out there and fight for your good name, fight for the good credit that you've established, and fight to reclaim your name from the identity thief's actions.
Well, whatever you do, don't pay it. Don't ever pay it. If you were the victim of identity theft, maybe it's only $100 or $500, and you figure, gee, if I just pay this, it'll get off on my credit report. That's the worst thing you can do. That, and what about hiring a credit repair company?
I personally wouldn't hire credit repair companies because credit repair companies are designed to game the system to do repeated disputes that are not necessarily factually inaccurate information. It's to get legitimate debt off of people's credit reports. So if you engage with a credit repair company, unfortunately, you're going to be lumped in and could be labeled as a person that's a credit repair person when you have a legitimate identity theft claim. And that's why I wouldn't hire a credit reporting company.
Yeah, every time we see those people come in, they say, hey, I paid hundreds of dollars to this company and they kept stringing me along for months and never anything comes off. Not only do they drag you out and charge you money and not give you the services that you need, but when it gets to us, it makes it even harder to get it fixed because they have you marked as a credit clinic and it's not coming off. So if I were somebody, I would avoid credit repair companies at all cost.
And the good news is if you reach out to us, we're happy to discuss whatever your particular problem is. I had somebody on the phone just the other day and they were like, how much is this going to cost for me to look at my dispute letter that I sent in? And I said, well, I'm not going to charge you anything. And he's like, you're a lawyer that doesn't charge anything? And I laughed. And I said, I don't charge you anything to look at your dispute letter and see if I can help you, because ultimately Hugo and I are here to help people. We believe that people are entitled to accurate credit reports and that it's simply unacceptable the consumer reporting agencies will not engage in proper statutory reinvestigations to fix your credit and reclaim your name.
This is our business, and we do it pretty well. And we've helped a lot of consumers get their good name back, get their credit back, and move on with their lives. And they go on to have very happy lives after that. So it may seem like a nightmare when you're going through it, and it is, but ultimately there is light at the end of the tunnel. And if you hire somebody who knows what they're doing, it can be a pretty bright light.
If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Please watch other videos, including inaccurate information videos, inaccurate information related to car leases, and improper Verizon and collection accounts. In the meantime, take care of your credit and dispute any inaccurate information on your credit file.
And we'll see you next time.